the progressive leadership is now saying, okay, well, we're going to support the Democratic Party and we're going to keep doing the same thing and this is what we're doing. And it's like nobody's even pausing to reflect on what has happened. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this is the really important point. First of all, I have to admit, I was a Bernie supporter from way back. Bernie actually went to my high school in Brooklyn before me. But so I've been following his career and I'm totally behind Bernie. But I want to tell you all, I'm pissed at Bernie right now. Because the candidate has ultimate power to challenge an election result. And it's been like a firewall. I know that you had a petition going. Millions of people have been writing to him and saying, you know, what are you going to do about it? And they said, well, we have lawyers, but they have not done anything up to this point to talk about election problems. And in fact, in that last talk that he gave, that we were all terrified that he was going to be saying, all right, I'm throwing in the towel, and he didn't. And he just went, you know, this issue after this issue after this issue. He never mentioned election fraud. And to me, that is the #1 issue on the planet, because the president of the United States is actually the president of the planet, you know, logically. And if we cannot throw out our elected officials by voting them out, we are slaves. And Bernie has to address this issue. And if he does not address this, he's encouraging people to run for office, which I absolutely agree with. But why won't they steal those elections as well? We have to deal with cleaning out this muck and having true, transparent elections in the United States, or we will never be able to change what's going on. So Bernie, your followers are getting angry about this. And I know that if the DNC gives this nomination to Hillary, there are people who say that it's Bernie or bust, that they're not going to vote for Hillary. And I am one of them. But we have to have a plan, like you're saying. What are we going to do? I heard a great idea on Facebook. And by the way, remind me what I'm saying, what I have to say about Facebook, Debbie. But the idea was, the moment that Hillary is anointed as the nominee, we have to all sign a petition or something that we're going to be sending to the DNC, and we have to change our party affiliation. We are not Democrats if Hillary Clinton is what the Democrats put forward as a Democratic candidate, because she is the one true Republican that will be running in this race. Donald Trump certainly is not. Hillary Clinton is.
Oh, well, I agree with you. I believe that the Democrats are now the new Republican Party, and the power operatives and the military-industrial profiteers and the power players who control this system have now decided that they're going to utilize the Democratic Party to institute their endless wars and their corporate dominance, because they can't do it effectively through Republicans anymore. They have been so co-opted by the Tea Party that this, you know, the Democratic Party is where it's at. And so you see, you know, the neoconservative elites coming over to Clinton, and you see the Jeb Bush donors and the Ted Cruz donors coming over to Clinton. And that's, I think, why you see, you know, we talk about, this is the first time we've seen, you know, this election voting thing going to a Democrat. Well, yeah, but she's now the operative of the Republican power players that were, you know, in control, I think, of those machines and that software and that system before, and now she's their new horse in this race.
In fact, I personally believe that it's Karl Rove, who flipped the elections for Bush, that's stealing the elections for Hillary Clinton. And there are some very knowledgeable people who know that there's a very tight relationship between Rove and Clinton. So it's probably being done with her knowing about it. But even if she doesn't know about it, she's the one who's won the lottery 12 times in a row, which is next to impossible.
Well, it's disturbing.
Oh, it's
go ahead. Continue.
One of the things that the Democrats, the DNC, are just chomping at the bit is to get access to the emails from Bernie Sanders, from all the people who have volunteered, given money, and given their time working for him. That's what they want. Now, I have been saying it's really important for us to all be able to join one email list, and we cannot depend on Facebook, because I personally have had posts completely disappeared from Facebook. I put it on, I got a lot of likes and shares, and lo and behold, I go back and they are all gone. So we cannot depend on using Facebook for communication. That's why I would like to see everybody signing up on subscribing. You can get on our site, electionnightmares.com, and subscribe so that we can communicate with each other if Facebook, if Twitter, if all of these corporate places shut us down, so that we will have a way of talking to one another and strategizing and coming up with plans.
Well, I think that's what's going to happen. I think that the people who have the lists from Bernie or Bust, the people who we're collaborating to get a group email list. But I'm going to probably move forward to try to get something, just to get the names and the emails of people who want to, be a part of an ongoing discussion about how we move forward in a different way and carry this forward, and not just be co-opted by these same entities that everybody's like, okay, we're just going to go the exact same way and use the same failed strategies, and we're not even going to talk about what happens. I think everybody does need to definitely organize and be in a central place where we can keep the discussion going. When you say, I agree with you on what you said about Bernie. It's been very hard on this channel to talk about election fraud and to call Bernie Sanders out on the fact that he has not been doing the things that he needs to do to, expose the election fraud. He didn't fight the battle that was necessary to win the war. Yeah. And people would get very upset with me and say, oh, well, he doesn't want to be called a sore loser, which I always thought was absurd. Yeah. You don't not fight a criminal act because somebody's going to call you a name. The people who are committing the criminal act against you are going to call you a name.
Yeah, stolen. It was stolen fair and square. So move on.
Stolen fair and square. We did. We cheated. Yeah. We cheated in the most blatant, horrible way possible. And I'm sorry, but I don't think people understand that Bernie not addressing this impeded our efforts to take this issue on. He, when he accepted the certification of bogus results, when he didn't file for hand counts in some states where it would have been allowed, which would have shown the fraud. As the candidate, he was the one who had harm legally, where he could take a lot of actions that we couldn't do. No matter how much work we tried to do, we were impeded by it.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, but if you ask your supporters for tens of millions of dollars, you ask your supporters for millions upon millions of man hours, you work to protect the vote. Mm-hmm. And I did not see that with Bernie Sanders. And I just feel at this point he has been complicit. People say, oh, he talks about it. I said, he talks about it only in safe ways. He'll talk about closed primaries and how it hurt them, but he won't talk about the exit polls not matching the official results outside of the margin of error. He won't talk about the mass purged election rolls. He won't talk about Hillary Clinton's campaign on video committing caucus rigging. And I don't know, Leanda, I've just been really frustrated with that.
I have too. When I saw what he did in Iowa, the first primary, the first caucus, and he says, oh, it's close enough, I'm not going to really do something about it. I said, that's it. It's going to be downhill and I said it right then and there. I said, if he doesn't stand up and fight for every vote, that means that he's fighting for us, the people who are supporting him. You know, and it's not just about Sanders. Like I said, it's about any candidate who wants to run in the future. Like Tim Canova down in Florida, who's going against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You know, he's more ready to stand up and fight against this. Bernie has been too compliant and accepting of this, and I'm not happy.
Has he talked about the election fraud? Because there's no way he's going to win if he does not take that on. I mean, that's Debbie Wasserman Schultz and some of the worst touchscreen voting machine manipulation in the country.
Right.
Has he been talking about that as a...
I believe he has. And what we're trying to do is to get candidates who are running to sign a pledge that they will not concede, that they will challenge wherever they can to make sure that all votes are counted. But you know what? I do have one pet project that I have been working on for months. And talk about firewalls. I've been, trying to get through to the Sanders campaign for months and months about this whole thing with the election stealing. But my idea was to try and get through to John Oliver, who has a fabulous program on HBO. And in fact, John Oliver was responsible for doing the first coverage of Trump's little hands that got through onto CNN, MSNBC, then Marco Rubio said something about it in the debate, and that's when Trump responded about his huge penis, Is
that what touched that off? I don't know.
Touched that off, and it's John Oliver. And what I would like all of your listeners to do is let's start tweeting Oliver and having it go viral. Do a segment on election fraud and please specifically put in about fractionalized voting, because I think 80% of our votes are counted on electronic voting machines right now, and these are programmed to cheat. And Oliver has to learn about that fractionalized voting that Bev Harris talks about on blackboxvoting.org. And so if we can all tweet him and write to him to the point where he's going to have to pay attention to it, if he does a segment on it, it's really going to have a tremendous impact, because so many people are not on Facebook and not on Twitter, and we have to get through to them as well. So do that. Do that.
We do need to get this message out to a much wider audience. I mean, it's starting to break. I mean, I've had, a few 100,000 people watch my election fraud videos. So that's a good start. I mean, and it's, it's a few 100,000 people who wouldn't have watched it otherwise. Lee Camp's done some good coverage. But, it's like, we're little potatoes. We can't reach, 2-3 million people in 5 minutes like the major media companies, and we're constantly up against that. So we are really going to have to work at a grassroots level and do those kind of campaigns. So what are your thoughts on what we do, where we go from here? Just
it's very frightening, and I guess for me, I'm holding out. I'm trying to be optimistic and thinking that that lawsuit will get filed, like Cliff Arnbeck says, and it's going to expose everything, and the DNC is going to have no choice except to say that Sanders won. So, with my broken wrist and everything, I'm trying to, keep my fingers crossed that it's going to work out that way. And but we, like Bernie says, we also have to get in those other candidates to support him everywhere from dog catcher all the way up. But if that doesn't happen, we can't rely on this 1.5 party system anymore. Because, and I think it started actually with Bill Clinton. As he moved more to the right, the Republicans moved more to the right, and hence the Tea Party and what's happened there. The Democrats there are so few Democrats right now, that real Democrats, that I don't believe in working inside this party anymore. And I think that the strongest party system is at least 3 parties, because then they can negotiate with one another. They can do trades. This way, it's who has more, and either you win or you lose. And that is a losing system. I'm going to be voting green. If Bernie says to vote for Hillary, I'm voting for Jill Stein. And I'm going to encourage, and I will work for her. I am not going to be a Democrat anymore. I'm going to be changing my party affiliation. It's going to hurt, because as my first vote and my every vote was as a Democrat, but they have disappointed me too many times, and I am not going to hold my nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. I'm not doing it. If it's time for a revolution, this is going to be it, because Trump is destroying the Republican Party and Hillary has destroyed the Democratic Party.
Hi everyone, this is Debbie. Welcome to the Sane Progressive, the YouTube video series that seeks to inject some sanity into modern American political dialogue. I do have for you today the interview with Bob Petrakis, who is an election integrity activist and one of the attorneys involved with the lawsuits that were discussed in the video Protecting Our Elections that was shared on trustvote.org, and that is the website for the Institute for American Democracy and Election Integrity. Lot of interest in those lawsuits. In the video, they did say that they were to be filed on June 6th. That date came and went, and people were wondering if they were still going to move forward. There is a delay. California happened. There was an obscene amount of election fraud and voting irregularities in California, which we discussed in this interview. And they needed to do a delay so that they could include the evidence to introduce it into their filings and motions. So we'll talk much more about that in the interview. If you are unfamiliar with who Bob Petrakis is, he is an attorney, as I said, a professor of political science at Columbus State Community College, political author and writer with 5 published works, also co-authored with Harvey Wasserman, did George W. Bush steal America's 2004 election, essential documents, and what happened in Ohio. And his partner in this, who is the lead attorney, is Cliff Arnebeck, who is the chair of the Legal Affairs Committee of Common Cause Ohio and a national co-chair and attorney for the Alliance of Democracy. He is a Harvard-educated lawyer, graduate of Harvard Law School, highly credible individuals, highly credentialed individuals. I will give you the biographies of the people involved with this case in the video description below. If you are unfamiliar with the issue of election fraud, it is not surprising. There has been a corporate media blackout. If you would like to bring yourself up to speed with a crash course, you can go to the election fraud blog, electionfraud2016.wordpress.com, and the evidence and the information and the documentation is arranged by state. So I want to share with you the interview. There was a few technical difficulties, but 95% of the interview, the audio and the sound was pretty clean. There's a few pops here and there, and Bob is a bit mushed to one side of the screen, but overall pretty clean, and it gives the information that you need to know, and it also gives you the answers to the questions that you have been asking me. So I'd like to thank Bob Petrakis for joining me yesterday, and he also has agreed very graciously to come back and update us when the lawsuits are filed. So thank you very much, Bob Petrakis. And without further ado.
Oh, glad to be here.
I'm so thrilled to have you on. I'm sure my viewers are going to be really interested in what you have to say. After the announcement and the video that came out, and it went viral from the Institute for American Democracy and Election Integrity, that's trustvote.org. You guys had announced on June 6th that there were going to be legal actions pending, lawsuits filed pending on June 6th, but that didn't go through. Was that due to the election fraud that occurred in California?
Had a lot to do with the what I consider a coup d'etat in California. I'm real reluctant to call it an election because it appears to be, in total numbers, one of the largest purges of voters and I think rigging of an election in the history of this nation.
I did the numbers on California. I pulled them up earlier. And right now, as the current vote total stands in California, the total number of votes between both of them is 3,442,623. There are still 2.6 million votes out from provisional ballots and vote-in ballots. That means 43% of the votes haven't even been counted yet.
Well, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. We've seen earlier patterns like this in New York and in Arizona. And if you look at our book on what happened in Ohio, that and prior to it on a smaller scale in Florida, were test runs on how to rig elections. We live in a world of mega and metadata and geospatial prisms and softwares. All of this has leaked over into elections. So now you can perfectly purge the Sanders supporters. And you can play a lot of games if you know the rules and what's in effect in a given state, right? We have 50 different state systems, and within that, 8,000 different election authorities, from 5,000 or so county levels to municipal registrars. So all of these systems make it impossible to have a transparent system. And it gives tremendous advantage to the people that are the party regulars, the apparatus that is in fact supporting Hillary Clinton, as well as, you know, the private technicians that come in as well.
I did see something interesting. I don't know if you saw this particular piece of information. I know you are in Ohio. You were involved in, you've written about what happened in Ohio in 2004 with the election fraud that was going to that went down there. Did you know that the person who is the San Diego election?
Michael Vu. I'm very familiar with Michael Vu, and in fact, I sent a warning column when Michael Vu went to San Diego. My thought is someday he would be involved in a massive scandal. Mr. Vu was technically the Democrat in charge of Cuyahoga County, where Cleveland is. Michael Vu distinguished himself by purging, allowing to be purged 24.96% of every single voter in Cuyahoga County in the city of Cleveland that voted 81, the city voted 81% Democrat for John Kerry. So a quarter of their voters. And it was done in a racist manner. The more a precinct was black, the higher the purge level. In some overwhelmingly black precincts, Mr. Vu allowed more than 51% of all the voters to, in fact, be purged, including many black soldiers who were fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. This is known as the Buffalo Soldiers Purge. They were sent challenge letters from the Republican Party, and they weren't in the country to get them, and he allowed them to be purged. He's one of the leading election manipulators in America, and he also had one of the highest rates of not counting provisionals. You know, if your name went slightly below the line, he would purge you. If the same information was on the inside ballot,
yes,
but you left your zip code off on the outside ballot, even though they gave you the ballot with the address on it, they would purge the vote. So he's a specialist in two things: stripping American citizens from the voting rolls and not counting provisional ballots. That's Mr. Vu's specialty.
Yes. Now, for my viewers who may
people
not
underneath him went to jail.
What?
The people underneath him at Cuyahoga County, why he stepped down, they rigged the recount in 2004. They pre-counted and then submitted as a random recount ballots they had already counted and knew would match.
Oh, boy. Well, now for people who are not aware of what happened in, we're talking about the voter manipulation that occurred in Ohio back in 2004 when the election was between John Kerry and George W. Bush. And there was a lot of scandal around that. Most people understand what happened between George W. Bush in Florida and Gore, but not as many people are aware that there was mass election fraud. And right now, what we're talking about is the fact that the San Diego elections registrar is a convicted Ohio election official who was the director of Cuyahoga County in Ohio. So they brought in the big record.
He lost his job or left. He wasn't convicted, but the people under him were convicted of rigging the recount in 2004.
All right. Well, thank you for the clarification. So, have you had any reports specifically coming into you or your affiliates about things that you saw in California that were particularly troubling?
I mean, yeah, we're getting reports. There's 2 or 3 patterns. Number one, the massive amount of provisional or affidavit ballots that had to be submitted. You know, I'm getting reports from precinct people. 60% of my precinct had to vote provisionally. 25% had to vote provisionally. Also, preliminary data from scientific exit polls in the northern part of the state is indicating that voters overwhelmingly are saying they voted at a higher rate for Bernie Sanders than Hillary Clinton, but those aren't reflected in the official numbers. I was actually.
Where are you getting that information? I heard that there was going to be some independent exit polls. Did Trust Vote the election?
Yes, Trust Vote actually did limited scientific random exit polling in anticipation for what we thought would be voter manipulation. And we have that information. That data is being crunched now. The preliminary reports are showing in certain precincts the Sanders vote, 12% higher than that which is reported.
Okay. That's not surprising, and to put that in context for people, a lot of people have a difficult time understanding why the discrepancy between the exit polls and the official results is such an important thing. But if you understand that the United States State Department, when they look at elections in other countries, a discrepancy of 2% outside the margin of error with an exit poll is grounds to call for an investigation for fraud into an election. And when you're seeing 12%, like Bob is talking about here, it is a huge, huge red flag. Did you see what happened in Washington, D.C. as well? Did you get the report out of that?
Yeah, the reports are trickling in. And again, it's these local poll workers or observers associated with the campaign who are reporting this ongoing pattern of people being, not showing up, not being registered, reporting, that their votes aren't being counted or that they're being targeted to vote provisionally. This happened in Ohio as well. The exit polls showed Clinton winning by 5% in Ohio. Officially, she won by 14%, which takes away delegates from Bernie Sanders. And this has happened prior to California and Washington, D.C., and as well as New Jersey. 11 states, if they weren't in the United States, our State Department would not certify their elections as legitimate. It did not meet our standards of a fair election, not only because of the massive and deliberate voter purging. And what people need to know is that these databases have all been privatized. Private, partisan, for-profit companies with secret proprietary software fix the databases, and I do mean fix them, at least in these 11 states. They target Sanders voters, easy to target, first-time voters signed up in their 20s. They have a lot of that demographics from private databases. So not only do you have that problem, you also have the problem with votes appearing to flip in particularly states that use DREs, the computer voting machines, the DREs, direct recording electronics, the faith-based voting machines, the what we call them push and pray, right? You push and you hope. There's nothing to document it. They can't be audited. About 8 of these states don't even require paper.
I know. It's breathtaking. The other thing I saw out of Washington, there was a report in the Washington Post. An unknown number of DC voters who went to the polls discovered that their party affiliation had changed without authorization. They say it was due to a glitch, a hack.
Of course, it always is.
And they're saying it was due to a software issue. But the thing about that was it was reported to them that this was occurring over a week ago, and they did absolutely nothing to address it. So really, it's been so amazingly blatant. There's been a corporate news media blackout. So I want to talk to you about what everybody is asking me about. What is going to be done? What lawsuits, what motions are going to be filed to try to challenge this, to bring some light to it, to bring some relief?
Well, there's already been some filed. You had the action in Arizona, which, the discrepancy in Arizona, you're talking 36 points between what people coming out said how they voted and what was reported. They actually called that election as final with only 71% of the people who attempted to vote having voted. You've now got a suit that will be filed in California, and there'll also be one filed from Columbus here. It'll be a federal suit. And again, I think it'll be dealing with the question of civil rights. But here's the problem, is that a lot of these suits have to proceed slowly. Many of the judges tend to be political. I think ours won't be filed on the state, but will be filed in federal court. And a lot of what we're really looking for is discovery. And more than anything else, we really like the unadjusted exit polls.
Right.
That indicate how bad the machines are, right? Because we're assuming that these privately programmed machines owned by private for-profit companies, handled by private technicians, that they're reporting accurately what's going on. As you probably saw, right, the DNC, we now know, was hacked twice by the Russians.
Yeah, I did see that.
One for a year straight with, total access. Hackers have read the CIA director's emails, but what the mainstream media doesn't want you to consider is that perhaps these 10 to 20-year-old, incredibly vulnerable, crappy machines that we vote on that use the internet, is somehow they're so old and so vulnerable, no one would think of hacking them. It would be too easy.
I've never heard that rationalization before. That's an interesting one. I did see what's going on with Hillary Clinton. It's an aside, but the fact is that WikiLeaks right now and Russia, it was the top story on Yahoo today that they're talking about. They're going to release Hillary Clinton's emails to show that she did indeed jeopardize national security with her use of a private server. This election is like being in the Twilight Zone. This gets more and more bizarre by the second. But what you brought up is really important. I think that people are enormously curious about the lawsuits that you're going to bring, because they desperately want to think that there is some remedy to this. People feel very violated. We've been very disempowered. So, I mean, what are our chances to make a difference with this lawsuit? Is there any way that this would affect an outcome before the Democratic National Convention?
I think if we get the discovery, right, if you don't overreach and we get the discovery, I think we can prove that essentially, I don't know who's doing it, oligarchs, private companies, loyalists in the Clinton campaign. What I do know with Clinton is clearly Democratic election officials in at least 11 states, should be in jail for deliberately purging voters that tend to support Bernie Sanders. I mean, there's clearly been people like Michael Vu and other election officials that have engaged in illegal activity. There should be, and Jill Stein has called for this, the Green Party candidate, there should be an immediate Justice Department investigation. We haven't seen these kind of purges since prior to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. You are targeting deliberately through your uses of databases the core of the Sanders supporters and making sure that they don't vote. And this has happened just about everywhere. People out in California, they sign up as independents and they're allowed to vote in the Democratic primary. Each party gets to decide whether independents can vote or not, and they find themselves in a right-wing party, the American Independence Party, or they find themselves with the NPP, a no-party preference ballot, which doesn't contain a vote for president. And then they're told that somebody mailed them a ballot from some of these registrars and that they can't vote because they didn't surrender the ballot they never asked for. This is deliberate and it's criminal.
It is.
And that's what we tend to be arguing in our lawsuit.
Okay, so you're going to file a motion for discovery. Is that to get access to the ballots, just so that I'm clear?
Well, I think the California place will look at the ballots, and eventually we hope to proceed in discovery to show that this is, a corrupt practice, that this is in fact organized crime, that these are not glitches, right? I didn't believe it in 2004 when Diebold, which went out of business for, quote, a pattern of worldwide corruption, and sold their voting company. First, they changed the name to Premier. They were so corrupt. Remember, their CEO, Walden Odell, wrote a letter pledging to deliver Ohio's vote to Bush. He had been a fundraiser, major fundraiser, had been down to the Crawford Ranch, and he sends this letter out, and it's on his tabulators throughout Ohio, the GEM system, the General Election Management System, which we now know, thanks to Bev Harris, counts people in fractions, right? Why, instead of one person, one vote, they could make a person a tenth of a vote. So that company went out of business. And when they accidentally purged 10,000 people a week or two before the election in Cleveland, they said it was a computer glitch. But these computer glitches are precise. In 2004, they targeted the supporters of John Kerry. What they're doing now, and again, the Sanders people are much more aware, they're targeting the core of Sanders' youth vote.
How do you think that they have gotten the ability to target Sanders supporters deliberately? Do you think it has anything to do with the NGP van data breach that happened last December when we knew their firewalls were down? Where you think they're taking the data off that? Because they do seem to be specifically targeting Sanders voters. I mean, they are purging.
I think my own personal belief is that the attack on Sanders, that somehow a Sanders person breach was a cover-up. Before the stolen elections in 2004, the personal computer of the Ohio Democratic Party chairman was stolen, and 2 counties, including Toledo, where numerous voters were purged in violation of the law. In Toledo, in Cleveland, and Cincinnati, in a year they're not supposed to purge, an election year, they purged 305,000 voters. And what the mainstream media will say, well, they purged some Dems and some Republicans. Absolute lie, as a political science. They're purging in black, minority, poor neighborhoods. They're purging in neighborhoods that vote 80, 90% Democratic in 2004. And that's what they're doing here. They're clearly targeting, and that's what they did here in Ohio. They purged numerous voters in Athens, Ohio University, and they forced virtually all of the students living in Athens County, where Ohio University is, living in the city, to vote provisional. And then you can discount those votes. Usually in Ohio, 17% of those will never be counted. This is a deliberate, precise data attack on the core of the Sanders campaign.
Yeah, I know they do disenfranchise the provisional ballots. There was, I think, only 20% of the provisional ballots got included into the final count in New York. Why do you think Senator Sanders is not addressing this? I know that myself and many other election integrity activists across the country have been, putting out red flags, red alerts. We've been writing the campaign. We've had meetings with the campaign. They will not respond, and they will not address this issue. What do you think is going on with that? Why are the candidates themselves who are harmed? They run these campaigns. They spend millions of dollars. They do all this work, but then they don't say a word when they're stolen. What is going on with that?
Well, I would hope that Sanders, he still has time. And also, what makes it difficult for a lot of the attorneys, he's the guy with the standing, right? He's the person directly harmed. So I would hope that he would step up and file suit. We know the history, right, is when, when they shifted 20,000 votes in Volusia County in 2000 in the Bush-Gore campaign, right, when they accidentally added a glitch, ES&S, the largest vote counter in America, the private company, added 16,000 votes to Bush and subtracted 4,000 from Gore, giving him a quick 20,000 vote jump. That's what allowed John Ellis, the first cousin of George W. Bush, on a 30-day contract from Fox News to call the election for Bush. It was called on a deliberate computer glitch and at that point, they could say, we really won, and all the other channels, right, the broadcast networks, impact journalism followed along. This was done because of a so-called computer glitch. So then you have to worry about being a sore loser. John Kerry, I briefed John Kerry in 2004. I was on the phone with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. I was his attorney, and we asked John Kerry about this, and he made it very clear he knew where the machines were melting down in Arizona and in New Mexico, that they were, his numbers weren't what they were supposed to be. But again, I think there's tremendous pressure not to call into question election rigging in the U.S. because of all the propaganda about us being the greatest democracy in the world. Although, I'm an academic. I'm aware that we're 47th out of 47th in long-standing democracies, right? That we're the worst. And I'm also aware, as you shared, I think the brilliant, response from the Carter Center on why they don't observe American elections.
Yeah, I know we don't meet the basic standards to have the mechanisms in place where they can monitor it. So they will not come in and monitor our elections. It is disheartening. I would hope, I have not given up on the campaign. It's my firm belief that we cannot remain silent in the face of a criminal act because we're worried about being called a name.
Now, there was a coup in California.
Yes.
There was not an election.
Thank you.
There was a coup d'etat.
Yes.
And, if we want to be a banana republic, we already are. These scenes should be taped off. Police should be there. Forensic computer experts should be breaking down the machines. If we held them to the same standard as casino machines, we would be doing much better. They have squads that come in when they think machines are crooked, and they tape them off, and they bring in their forensic computer experts and get to the bottom of why the machines aren't paying off. Here, when you have blatant theft and systematic targeting of voters of a candidate, it's supposed to be, you're a sore loser if you don't go along with election rigging. And I would encourage Sanders to go along with what Jill Stein is saying. The Justice Department needs to come in. Cyber squads needs to come in. People need to be arrested. Michael Vu would be at the top of my list. And they need to be held accountable for the purging and the violation of the Voting Rights Act.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody's going to ask me, when do you think the next action is going to be filed? I'm just going to ask you what everybody's going to ask.
The California. I think there's an agreement that after California, that it has to be a federal action.
Okay.
I think, I'm hoping within the week. My role in this has changed. Originally, I was the leading expert witness. And then at one point, I was actually going to file in Ohio because, I've run for office. I'm actually running for prosecutor in Franklin County on the pledge that I will arrest, if I'm elected, I would arrest the Secretary of State. So it's my campaign plank here in Franklin County. I don't know what else to do with these people. It's sort
That's beautiful.
Somebody,
beautiful.
even if I can't convict him, he needs a good frog walking. People are afraid to, these election officials have to be accountable. And now, again, so I'm not the attorney anymore. I'm back to being, one of the lead witnesses. But I think, hopefully within the week, and hopefully we'll get discovery that'll go across the nation, because it's just not Ohio. It's just, the fact that they stole the, 9% of the vote here seems to end up in Hillary's numbers when in reality that didn't happen. The exit polls tell us that didn't happen. But, you've now got at least 13 states, and other places like DC and Puerto Rico, which should be considered crime scenes. So we're hoping within the week to get that out. Again, originally we were rushing to do one thing. The initial, we wanted to file it prior to the elections to get access to the adjusted numbers. But the counter move, notices were sent out to the Edison research groups that does exit polling, as well as to the consortium to hold their records, because there was a lawsuit coming. But they responded, of course, by simply canceling the exit polls. And the AP then, which basically can't do simple math, suddenly discovered that Hillary had already won.
I know. The AP certainly can't do simple math because it's reporting 100% of precincts reporting right now in California. Well, 43% of the vote is out. So it's so blatant. It's so disheartening. Who is the lead lawyer on this right now? Is that Cliff Arnbeck? Is he the one?
Yeah, Cliff Arnbeck is the lead attorney. And at this point, I'm an expert witness in the case, primarily because everything you're now seeing on a large scale happened in Ohio in 2004.
All right. Well, that at least gets us on the same page of what is going on now, because I think people are just feeling just so deflated. They're ready for this revolution, and Sanders isn't speaking out on the fraud. She's been coronated and being installed into this Democratic presidential nomination. So people are just like, they're just hanging their hat on your lawsuit. And I'm trying to tell people that these things take time and they take, organization.
And there's also another lawsuit that'll be coming out of California. I think we've spawned not only just the lawsuit we're working on, but my understanding isn't there supposed to be one in Massachusetts?
That was filed.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a filing in Illinois. We've been talking to people. So I think on some level, lawyers everywhere shouldn't wait for one suit. But in all of these, 13 or so states that had blatant corruption, suits should be filed everywhere. Because what we need, whether there's political judges throwing them out or not, we need to get into the public record what happened. So everybody knows when the convention comes, and that there should be a re-credentialing of delegates. From my count and many other people's, Sanders won this election. He deserves to have his delegates. And I'm hoping if they don't treat him fairly, and again, I believe they should confess to their crimes, or there should be no peace at that convention. And I hope that Sanders delegates walk out unless they get some justice regarding the blatant stealing of elections and the recent coup in California.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I'm working with the Bernie or Bust delegates. I'm going to be down in Philadelphia, and we're going to be coordinating and talking about things in real time to plan action in response to what happens to that convention. And I think it's very powerful that you just said that, and I want to share that with them. So you're going to be working on these lawsuits. I know people want to help. Is there anywhere they can donate? Is there anything that they can do? Because they feel powerless, they want to act, they want to help.
Well, then go to votetrust.org or my site, thefreepress.org. I've run a nonprofit since 1986, and just earmark the money for the lawsuit. And again, another thing, Harvey Wasserman and I wrote a book called The Strip and Flip Selection, not election, but selection of 2016. And the last chapter spells out and documents in great detail how this has been done consistently since 2000. And that, quite frankly, and I suspect it's because Bernie wanted a political revolution and he's gotten more votes than any open democratic socialist in the history of this country, is that they've deliberately targeted him because of his message, because of his political revolution, that he actually pulled it off. So the only way they can keep the status quo in place, the neocon war policies, the crony capitalism, the intervening in countries like Libya and Syria, and the type of endless war, is by stealing the vote of the people.
It is. It's absolutely disheartening to see what they're doing, and I think the worst part is the collusion of the media with the politicians to do that, because it's very much a coordinated effort. Now, I know Cliff had talked about in the video from the Trust Vote site that they were talking about doing a lawsuit on going after the media. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think for discovery, and what we discover would indicate whether or not, right, if they know this stuff is happening, their internal memo, I don't know how they can't, right? They have people around there that understand statistics, right? They've got to know that their polls are showing, the unadjusted polls, different results. Now, they've got people like Joshua Holland of The Nation, Mother Jones, and people at Alternet, what we consider progressive gatekeepers, attacking us as conspiracy theorists. The problem, by suggesting that they use exit polls to call election, the reality is they do. Our State Department does. The American, the Agency on International Development sets guidelines for this stuff that works for the State Department. So, anyone who's watched TV, I was watching in Ohio when CNN called the election, and there was not a single precinct that had reported from Cuyahoga County, the largest urban area in the state. So I called them up and said, "Are you guys reporting the results?" And they said, "No, we will in 45 minutes. But CNN, based on the exit polls, had called the election for Clinton. So then they want to turn around and say, well, you can't call things on exit polls. They do it all the time. And that's what exit polls are designed for. They're trying to get you to believe that that's not possible. So there is a way to bring up a civil RICO. You can start a lawsuit, and if you get discovery and the necessary evidence, and it is in fact organized crime, it is in fact illegal collusion, and the Edison Research Group that's got a monopoly on the polling for the media consortium, the 4 big broadcasting networks, CNN and the Associated Press, and they know that these numbers are corrupt and they're reporting them, I think you can make a case that they're engaged in organized crime.
That's what this feels like. It feels like we're going.
That's what it is.
Organized. It does not feel like.
Make no mistake about it.
Organized.
It's not an accident. It's deliberate, and a lot of these techniques were really used in the Third World during the Cold War, where the CIA in the 70s admitted to rigging 5,000 local, state, and national elections. What used to be done covertly in the Third World, they're just doing it openly now in the United States to beat back the Sanders forces.
All right. So that's what we can do. We can help and donate to these sites.
And in your own state, if you're in one of these states, I would go and look at Richard Charnon's blog and the other tables that are there. If you're in one of these states, it's got one of these totally impossible results. Hillary Clinton's out hitting the Powerball, Super Lotto, Classic Lotto, Pick 5, all at the same time with her election results. I mean, just totally impossible results. So I'm encouraging lawyers everywhere to file, 1, 2, 3, dozens of lawsuits. And also, people really need to go down when they certify these votes in California and really be prepared to occupy the boards of elections, to occupy Michael Vu's office, because you can't let this level of crime go unprotested. And I'm not talking about violence, I'm talking about the finest tradition of American nonviolent civil disobedience.
Well, I'm totally with you, and that's another great call. And I think that if anybody is going to be willing to do that, to occupy the registrars of elections office, it would be Californians. I cannot believe the response. They are on the ground right now. They're watching it like hawks. They're bringing attorneys to oversee the counts. I mean, they're fierce out there. They knew this was coming, and they actually prepared for it. So it's been
I was out there a week ahead of time, sadly predicting every single thing that happened. I also think people need to get some yellow police tape and symbolically wrap it around the really bad precincts and the boards of election where the vote they suspect is being stolen. And I'm not above a citizen arrest as well.
Well, no, this is the time for it. I mean, if we're gonna get the police tape out, let's go down to Philadelphia and we'll tape up the whole convention center with yellow tape. It's a crime scene in there.
We may have to. People are in there illegally credentialed who did not get the vote of the people. People's votes were stripped, and in some cases, it looks with the exit polls, in at least about 13 of these states, it looks like somebody was flipping them as well.